A real life story with a business that I was part of that listed on the stock exchange here in London. And when I joined, their sales were about £1 million. 3 years later, their sales were £27 million. So we tripled the company every year for 3 years running because we went out and bought companies and put them all together.
Welcome to the Collins Mayaki CEO Mentor Series, where visionaries reveal what it really takes to lead, grow, and leave a legacy. In this episode, Collins sits down with David B Horne.
Many entrepreneurs that I speak to, their weak area is finance. Unfortunately, a lot of accountants that are out there serving small businesses, all they're concerned about is compliance, filing the accounts, filing the tax returns, and not providing the commercial input.
Former CFO turned investor, mentor, and deal maker behind over $400 million in capital raised.
So it was 2010. We had done a big M&A transaction, put these two companies together, and we ended up being a business with operations in 23 countries around the world.
From mindset blocks to the FACE method for scaling.
You've got this methodology which is called a FACE. How do you mentor founders through each stages?
From funding gaps for underrepresented founders. This is more than a conversation. This is the playbook for CEOs ready to rise. Tap in and unlock the mindset of a high-level founder.
Fantastic. Welcome everyone. Today we've got David B Horne. I'm actually interested to know what that B stands for. But as always, this is the CEO Mentorship Series, and I'd like to pass this on to David for him to properly introduce himself. And while you're introducing yourself, David, if you can also just tell me what that B stands for, that would be great, please.
Absolutely. The B stands for Bowen, which is my middle name. It was my paternal grandmother's maiden name.
Interesting. You know some story to it.
Absolutely. So my name's David Horne. Apologies for the bad voice. I've come down with a cold, but I'll soldier through. So I was born and raised in Vancouver in Canada. I went to school there, graduated from university there. I trained as a chartered accountant with PwC, and then moved internationally with PwC. In the summer of 1987, my wife and I moved from Vancouver to Zurich, Switzerland. We'd been married about 4 years at that stage, so we sold off what few possessions we had and packed our clothes into 4 suitcases and got on board an airplane with one-way tickets and a 2-year employment contract, and that was 38 years ago.
Wow.
So we stayed in Switzerland for 6 years, and then we moved to London in 1993 and have been in London ever since. My wife's originally from the UK. Her family emigrated to Canada when she was 3. And my dad was born here, so I have dual citizenship as well. So,
well, there you go. Amazing. I don't know if I missed out on this, but do you have any siblings?
I do. I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, the baby of the family. I love that.
Absolutely. And then I've got 2 grown-up daughters who are in their 30s, and I've got 2 grandchildren, a little boy who's nearly 3 and a little girl who's nearly 1.
That's amazing. You definitely lived life. I think that's the goal for a lot of us. That's to raising young family to get to a stage where we can call ourselves grandparents and see the kids that we've raised succeed doing something and adding value to the communities as well.
Absolutely.
Amazing. That's really good. I can just imagine that I'm sure you've got a lot of amazing stories as well, David. But let me try and keep myself focused on the mission at hand here. So, Dave, as I said, what we're all about is about mentorship, right? We've got questions here in relation to that. And the first question we've got here for you today is, what's the most game-changing piece of advice a mentor's given you in your early careers?
So this would have been when I was in Switzerland. I had left PwC and was working. I was the financial controller of the Swiss subsidiary of a big American tech hardware company. And we had a big education division. And I was talking with the managing director of the education division. And we were talking about pricing. And he looked at me and he said, "David, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance."
I got to agree with you on that one.
Absolutely. And, throughout my corporate career, I always made sure that I, took the opportunity to get training where I could and it's great being a chartered accountant. I have a requirement to complete certain number of hours of CPD training every year, and I always over complete on that, because I think there's just so much to learn in the world today, and right now in my business I've got a team of 6, and we probably spend about 3% of our sales on training myself and the team.
Wow, that's amazing. Come to think about it, you said you used to be an accountant. Based on my understanding, based on the previous accountants that I've dealt with over the years, most accountants, maybe you're just a different style of accountant, most accountants are typically quite conservative, based on the ones I've dealt with. And to see an accountant that will come out of their comfort zone and go into the space you're currently in, which is merger and acquisition, it's not quite common. Would you agree on that? Or what makes you different? Would you call yourself, was this something about you as an accountant that you knew you just didn't fit the mold of the typical stereotypical accountant style?
100%. I call myself a right-brained accountant. Absolutely. And while I was going through my training, I often, sort of bashed against the walls of the structure of, here's your program and all of that. But it was fantastic business training. I don't practice any direct accountancy work today. My team does the accountancy work for clients. But I review it and supervise it and watch it and train them and make sure that they're growing and developing. I am definitely not your stereotypical accountant.
I love it. What was the first business you first ever stepped into as a CEO or founder, and what was that process like from going from a PAYG employee to an employer? How was that process like, that transition like for you?
Scary. So it was 2010, and I had been the chief financial officer of a company that was listed on the stock exchange here in London. We had done a big M&A transaction in the spring of 2008 and put these two companies together, and we ended up being a business with operations in 23 countries around the world. We went out to the stock exchange and raised money to do the transaction, came back to the markets after and said, look, we've done everything that was set out in the prospectus. Everything's looking good. We've done all the stuff we said we were going to. And then a week later, Lehman Brothers went bust and the whole global financial crisis hit, and 6 months and 4 profit warnings, the chief exec got fired and a new guy was brought in. I mean, it wasn't the chief exec's fault, but somebody had to go. And they brought in a new guy, and he and I just didn't get on at all. So I thought, okay, if there's a boardroom fight, I know I'm going to lose. So I took time and thought, what do I want to do? And I decided I wanted to follow my passion. And I spent a lot of time talking to friends and family, and it boiled down to one of two things, either music or wine. And my then teenage daughter said, Dad, you're too old for the music business, but wine would be perfect. So I went to night school and got my wine trade qualifications and thought, hey, I've got a great little black book with lots of contacts of people who make lots of money. Sure, they'll buy wine from me. And they didn't. And it was a rude awakening. But, sometimes you have to have rude awakenings to get through and go deep and come out stronger the other side.
Well, it's quite amazing listening to you say that. This is where I hear a lot of people say things about, follow your passion, and you said music and wine, and clearly you looked at your passion, you followed it, that didn't work out. What would be because I do have a few mentees, and I sometimes say to them that, listen, what brings in the money may not be your passion, but what brings in the money can eventually fund your passion, which is what I do try to explain to people. How were you able to transition from working out very quickly that, wine being my passion may not work, and going into something that, could pay the bills and, raise the family as well?
I didn't do it very quickly. I went into an 18-month period of denial, which is a dark and scary place to be. But again, I've been through that. I came out of that. I was forcibly ejected from it in the summer of 2012 when my father had an accident and fell down a flight of stairs and broke his neck and never recovered. And I flew back to Vancouver, and I was there when he died. But that was really the kick up the bum I needed to get my life back on track.
Wow. So it had to take such a dramatic life change for you to go, all right, what am I doing with my life? I gotta do something here. Something's got to change. Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this leads me to the next question. When scaling your first company, who mentored you, and how did it shape your leadership style moving forward?
When I was doing the wine business, nobody mentored me, and I'm sure that's why it went all horribly wrong.
Interesting.
I have several mentors now in my existing business, two in particular, and I also work with a coach.
Wow, amazing. Now, the other question I do have is you've got dozens of entrepreneurs. What common mindset blocks do you help them overcome? Because you've done this so many times. I'm sure you start seeing trends and patterns with people. Can you just talk us through it?
Yeah. So the key things I see. I always say to entrepreneurs that every business is unique, but every business at the same time is the same. They've all got to go out and find and win customers. That's called sales and marketing. They've all got to deliver whatever it is they do to their customers. That's called operations and logistics. And they've all got to manage the flow of money in and out of the company, and that's called finance. And they need to make sure that they look at each of those three areas as being important in their business. And I often use the metaphor of a three-legged stool. If you've got two legs that are really strong and one leg that's weak, the whole thing falls over. And many entrepreneurs that I speak to, their weak area is finance. For whatever reason, they never learned it. They shied away from it. They thought, oh, well, as long as I bring in the sales, it'll be all okay. And unfortunately, and again, coming back to the accounting profession, unfortunately, a lot of accountants that are out there serving small businesses, all they're concerned about is compliance, filing the accounts, filing the tax returns. They're not providing the commercial input to allow these entrepreneurs to really understand and learn what finance is. And I've lost count of the number of people that I speak to that say, my accountant just prepares the accounts and the tax returns and doesn't give any other value, doesn't really give any value because that's just stuff that has to be done. And that's a shame, really. And so that's part of my business is we do that for clients. We actually go in and we run their accounts teams and we provide that strategic value. I'm on the board of half a dozen companies that are clients of mine. So I play the kind of fractional CFO role for them. And then I've got a team of people who do the tactical day-to-day accounting. Okay, so I always look at the three areas, and I always say, if you want to grow your business, as your business grows, you've got to have good leaders in those three areas. And, when many founders are starting out, they kind of feel like they've got to do everything. And in the very early days, they do. But as soon as they start to gain any kind of traction, they will accelerate their ability to grow by bringing in people who are specialists in that sector. And, the number of times I've seen it where all of a sudden, oftentimes the founder is pretty good at selling because they've had to be. But they're struggling with the delivery. And I say, okay, so go out and find a fractional chief operating officer or an operations manager or someone who's really good at that day-to-day delivery of whatever it is that you're doing to make sure your customers are being looked after. Because the last thing you want to do is go to all the effort of winning the customers and then screw up on the delivery and lose the customer. And so as your business grows, you need to make sure you're investing in those three areas. There are other areas as well, but those three areas exist in every single business.
Absolutely. It's quite amazing. So just to recap on that, you're saying the three traits are sales, ops.
Sales and marketing, which is all about finding and winning customers.
Sales and marketing,
operations, which is all about delivering whatever it is that you do.
Correct. And finance. Money
which is all about managing the flow of money.
Account receivable, account payable, and all that stuff, outgoings and so on. Perfect. It's quite remarkable too as well, because For me, I did also study accounting in school. But I realized very quickly I wasn't your typical accountant. So it was quite boring for me. I actually quit my first job working in Deloitte. I quit very quickly because I realized very quickly this is not for me. Then I got into banking and finance. But the skills in accounting just really served me well. That's why I was in there for a very short period of time, but because I understand accounting, it was my major in university, and I quite like numbers and things like that. But you're 100% right, David, when you said that a lot of people that run good businesses, even in a few of my businesses and my mentees, the word finance, I've realized, is a common trend. People not being across that side of their business. They know the number, but they don't really understand it really, really well. They don't know their numbers really well. So it's quite interesting. Yeah. So you've found a niche, a gap in the market, which most people underlook, and you've gone, all right, how do I dominate that space, which is quite incredible. Maybe I might take some ideas here too as well. It's quite amazing. This is amazing. It sounds simple, but there is a massive need for it. So simple, there's a massive need. So even if accountants now can just go out there and start going to their clientele and say, listen, hey, we've got an extra service, which is a concierge service, where we will come in and look at your overall operation, see what's going on, and create some sort of a process for you on what to do. And you just have us, and we'll give you regular catch up every fortnight or whatever to help you optimize your finance, to make sure there is no leakage. Just even accountants can literally 5 times 20x their business by adding what they already do, but be more intense, I think more purposeful in terms of delivering that.
Look forward rather than looking back.
Correct. Yeah, because that's what accounting is all about. They basically do the tax return when all the damages and all the stuff has already been done and go, okay, what can we rectify? Well, you can't do much anyway. The action has already been taken. But rather than looking back, as you said, why don't we look forward? Why don't we have plans in place in terms of what we want our BAS to look like, what we want the trajectory to look like? How much do we want to pay to the ATO? Are we expecting such a large amount of money coming in? How do we want to disperse that? Should we be reallocating that somewhere? Not that we get it, then we spend it, they'll say, okay, how can we get some money back? Or how can we avoid paying taxes? Well, it's already done. Got it. I love it.
Interesting you say that, though. I have a friend who runs a very successful accounting business in Ireland, and he says that his job is to maximize his client's tax bill because he maximizes their profit. So many accountants go, we'll help you minimize your tax bill. And he says, no, I'll help you maximize it by growing your business and making it huge and successful. You're going to pay a lot of tax, but you're going to make so much more money.
That's amazing. But that's a whole different way of saying that, actually, because I've never actually had an accountant saying, I will help you maximize your tax bill. That's wow. Yep. David, you are dropping nuggets here. I don't know if you know what you're doing here. You're just dropping gems, gold. Literally, guys, you can take this information and run with it. I can promise you, David can't find you and invoice you. This is free information that is being set out here. David, my next question is, you've got this methodology, which is called the FACE. Fund, acquire, consolidate, exit. How do you mentor founders through each stages? Could you talk us through that, please?
So first up, the FACE methodology is set out in detail in my book, Add Then Multiply, which is available worldwide through Amazon. It's available in paperback, on Kindle, and on audio. Sales pitch over. I basically work with founders and look at where they want to grow, what they want to do to their businesses. You can come into the process anywhere in the process. So I have clients that sometimes come to me and say, I'm starting to think about exiting my business. What do we do? And so we just focus on preparing them for exit. But if we start at the beginning, kind of working through each stage. So the fund stage is all about where can you bring additional money into the business. And here I'm not talking about specifically growing your sales or anything like that. I'm actually saying, can you raise debt funding? Can you go out and borrow money from someone? Or can you raise equity funding? Can you sell a stake in your company to an investor who will then put cash into your business? And the beauty of having additional cash in your business compared with being a bootstrap business is it allows you to do things so much faster. You've got the money, you can go out and hire the teams. I remember advising one client on this, and we had raised some money, and he said, to really make this grow, I want to have the best salesperson I can get. And I said, oh, who is that? And he said, oh, it's this guy. And I said, well, let's approach him. And he said, no, we can't afford him. And I said, look, we've just raised a ton of money. Of course you can afford him. So they went out and bought and interviewed and hired the guy. And yes, he was expensive, but he brought in tremendous value.
Wow.
So there's a bit of a mindset shift that you have to go through when you've raised capital, because typically what you're doing when you're raising investment funding is you're going to either a lender or an investor and saying, this is what I want to do. This is the money I need to do it. They provide the money for you and you execute it. So know what you want to do and go out and do it.
Fantastic. So that's funding. So in terms of acquire, which obviously, I don't know if you've touched on that, but can you elaborate a little bit more on that as well?
Absolutely. So acquire is all about going out and buying things. And, in the case I just showed, buying things might be hiring a really, really hot employee. But typically buying things is maybe buying some assets. It might be that, if you're a company that needs some production equipment, you can go out and buy that equipment, or you can go out and buy another company. And that's really my main area of focus is helping entrepreneurs to grow by going out and buying other companies. And there's a case study in the middle of my book, which is based on a real life story with a business that I was part of that was listed on the stock exchange here in London. It was before the auction one that I ended up leaving to set up the wine business. But this was a publishing business. And when I joined, their sales were about £1 million. And 3 years later, their sales were £27 million. So we tripled the company every year for 3 years running.
Wow.
Because we went out and bought companies and put them all together. And that's where the consolidation side comes in. The C is consolidate, is all about how you put companies together in order to make sure that you maximize the value, that you don't do stupid things that lead to, clients leaving, key employees leaving, things like that. But that you actually really work out strategically, okay, this is how we want to maximize the value from doing this acquisition. Because if it's not executed well, it's at the consolidation phase that the deal value gets destroyed.
Wow. And would you recommend for a sole operator, let's say, a sole operator in a business to do this? Obviously, they probably might be able to do this on a smaller scale. Or would you always suggest for a sole operator to get other investors invested into their business?
I would suggest that a solo operator needs to build up their company to achieve a minimum scale before they go out and do this.
Gotcha.
Because they want to have, again, going out and doing this process takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of mental bandwidth. Yeah. So they need to make sure that there's people in their company that are running the day-to-day activities of the company.
Gotcha.
So typically I say to people, you want to be having sales of at least £1 million, so 2 million Aussie dollars.
Gotcha.
Once you hit that scale, you've got a proven product market fit. You've got an operation and a team that's working. Then you can start to look, okay, now how do I grow strategically?
Gotcha. Would you, because I do speak to a lot of business owners where you get some business owner, they're making money. I've got few mentees. Their business has got a turnover of $3 million on a bubble. Yep. But they are under this idea of, I like the fact that the business belongs to me. I own 100% of the share of the business. I don't have to report to people.
Yep.
What would you say is in regards to that? Because when I look at them too as well, I can see there is definitely opportunity for them to even go bigger and better, right? But they've got limitation in terms of what they can do alone. What would
Correct.
be your recommendation, your advice to people like that? And yes, in some cases, some people, yes, that's better for them based on the way their lifestyle. But people that have that vision, aspiration to build a global organization, what would be your recommendation to them?
So the key issue there, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to maintain 100% control. But if you want to maintain 100% control, you're going to be limited in your growth by the amount of cash that you can bring into the business. That's the classic bootstrap case. The way I like to describe it is, think of a pie, and you own a pie that's this big, and you own 100% of it. But if you follow my methodology and raise money and buy companies and put things together, you could own a pie that's out here, and you only own, I'm off camera, but a pie that's here, and maybe you only own half of it. Yep. But half of this pie is a lot more than all of this pie.
I love the way you've explained that.
And there's a great example, a guy I know, he's a Swiss tech guy. He sold his company to a private equity group, and stayed with the group and built it, and then sold his last stake. So he sold the first 76% of his company for $25 million.
Wow.
And then grew the business through executing my face strategy, even though he and I hadn't met at the time, but because that's what private equity firms do as well. They provide the capital and scale things up. He sold the remaining 24% for $75 million.
Wow, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go. Yeah. That's amazing. That's quite amazing.
So, wow. That's the mindset you got to have. And so he was comfortable with that, and he went into it knowing this private equity firm owns a majority stake in the business. They can call the shots. And he said, I'm actually here to learn from them. And he worked with them and followed their model, and he remained the chief executive of the company, and played a key role throughout this. But he learned from them and scaled it up, and with a third of the stake that he used to have, made 3 times as much money.
That's amazing. I hope you guys are understanding what David is saying here. It's quite amazing. 100%, and it's a typical kind of example I always say, 100% of zero is zero. 100%, 2% of a billion is amazing. It's crazy. So, there has to be a mindset shift and understanding the value, and obviously the type of people that you bring to your fold that would help you scale, take you to where you want to go to as well. Something you got to do your homework onto as well. This leads me to my next question now, David, is what are the biggest mistakes CEOs make when trying to grow too quickly? Because yes, we could potentially apply the FACE methodology, right? But is there certain things we got to be worried about, that we got to mind for? You did mention something along the line of, Aussie businesses, generating $2 million. Maybe that's a good starting point before they start applying that kind of methodology. Is there key trigger point, things that level business owners should be at first before they start doing this?
No. I mean, before they start implementing FACE, yes, they need to get that. But in terms of growing, the key mistake that I see founders and entrepreneurs doing is not letting go. They want to control everything themselves. They want to do everything themselves. They again, it comes back to my 3-legged stool example. As their business grows, they need to bring in a qualified person to lead their sales and marketing, a qualified person to lead operations, a qualified person to lead finance. They're very different skill sets. And the founder in the beginning probably covered all 3, but as the business grows, they just don't have the bandwidth or the capability to know in detail the kind of stuff that they're going to be faced with. And as your business grows in size and complexity, you're going to start being faced with more complicated issues and things. And that's where bringing in experts really helps. And one of the great things, it's been around for a long time, but since the pandemic, the whole concept of the gig economy and fractional roles, you don't have to hire full-time people on 6-figure salaries. As you're getting up to that size, you can come in and you can hire a CFO who comes in once every fortnight, and you can hire an operations person who comes in 3 days a week, and you might want to hire a full-time salesperson to drive the revenue growth and get the engine going. But as the business grows, you got to make sure that those 3 legs of the stool grow with it. And by not letting go, the founders are are holding back their ability to grow strongly and capably, because if one of those legs is weak, the stool falls over.
I really love this. Again, I'm just going to mention all this stuff. So these are the three phases again: sales and marketing, operation, finance. Having key people in those roles is quite crucial for the growth and the longevity of every single businesses. That's quite remarkable. I'll keep repeating those words as we go along here. This is great. My next question here for you, David, is what makes a mentor-mentee relationship work long-term, especially for high-growth CEOs?
Trust and honesty. And when you have trust and honesty, when feedback has to be a little bit harsher than it might otherwise be, when trust and honesty are there, the feedback can be given in a way that's necessary. So, a mentor might be mentoring someone and they're really, really messing something up. And rather than kind of dancing around it and, oh, well, you might want to maybe...
You don't want to hurt their feelings. Come on, Dave.
No, you've got a problem in this part of your business. If I were running your business, this is what I would do, but I'm not running your business. What are you going to do? And let's work that plan. Let's talk about, here's a major issue you've got. I will give you advice and guidance, but I want you to come up with the solution, because you're the one who knows your business better than anyone.
I totally agree. Now, this basically, the situation I've had in the past as well is, do you deal with older demographic of business owners? Do you deal with younger people? Because I've noticed there is ways on how people take on feedback based on their age group too as well. I noticed my older mentees in their 40s, 50s take it really well. The younger ones in their early 20s sometimes do get quite emotional. Sometimes. Is it just me based on the bad luck of draw of the heart? I'm not saying every 20 are like that, but this is things I've personally experienced that made me, kind of shifted the way I deliver it. Because I found they were a little bit more sensitive. So I'm a little bit, caring in terms of how I deliver it. While my older ones, I just give it to them, and I know they can take it on. What would be your advice on that?
I think part of the issue is, think back to when you were in your 20s and when I was in my 20s. And hey, we thought we knew everything, we had it. I remember coming out saying to one of my bosses, "Look, I'm a chartered accountant. I got 3 years experience." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm a chartered accountant and I've got 35 years experience. Don't you think you should listen to me?" So, I think to a large degree it is that confidence of youth and belief in themselves. The truly clever ones learn to take that on board. And I remember moments early in my career where I was being given advice and I didn't take it. And then things went wrong. And then it was like, I told you so.
So then how do you go about balancing telling a mentee, right, hard truths while inspiring them? You want to tell them the hard truth, but at the same time, keep them inspired. How do you go about doing that?
It comes back to building the trust and the honesty. I think the first key element of the relationship has to be based around building trust and being open and honest and having a clear communication path. And I oftentimes, when I'm mentoring people, the first 2 or 3 meetings, we talk about life. We talk about life experiences that we've had. We connect on a human level before going into the more businessy things. And when you connect on a human level, you have and you have empathy for their situation, and you understand what happened in their lives, and what were the great moments in their lives, and what were the difficult moments in their lives, and when you can empathize with that, and then give give your advice and your guidance based around their lived experience, I think it just makes it makes the relationship a lot deeper.
Wow. Wow. So how have your mentorship approach evolved from your early PwC days to now?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, I left PwC in 1989, so that's 36 years ago. So, you know, I mean, I remember going into my first management role and just thinking, oh, well, I'll just, you know, I'm the guy who sits in the office and tells people what to do. And I very quickly realized that that wasn't how it worked. and then started, again, just, you know, and I guess it was part of my own lived experience that I started to connect with people and really understand. And I remember, you know, when I had my job at that big tech company, and about 6 months in, and my boss said, you've got to connect better with your people. And I took the time, and I actually went and sat down and spent a few hours with every single person in my team to understand who they were and what the challenges were that they faced. And that was a great, great bit of guidance from I mean, it wasn't my mentor, he was my boss, but it was a mentorship kind of advice that he gave me.
Wow.
You know, to go out and understand your people. And now whenever I do that, whenever I'm going through a recruitment process, and some people might think this is weird or uncomfortable or whatever, but I don't care, it works, is I like to find out about the human being. You know, who are you? What do you do in your spare time? What makes you really happy? What pisses you off? You know, what's your favorite thing to do on the weekend? You know, you've just won £1,000 or $1,000, you know, out of the blue. What are you going to do?
Yep.
You know, and oh, well, I'll save it, or no, I'm going to take my mates out, or I'm going to go on, you know, just understand what makes people tick.
Wow. Wow. Would you say, as humans, we're really losing the human touch, human elements way of, you know, connecting as human, due to the way, you know, the environments we're currently living in? Because all what you're saying sounds quite basic, is things that I normally do, but at the same time, in the current environment we're in, I notice a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just get straight into business. A lot of people think it's a waste of time doing that sometimes. I've even had a mentee say to me, hey, why don't we just get into it? I'm like, listen, there's a reason why we're doing this. You know, it's part of the process, and you got to trust the process. Like, what would you say is the reason why? Because me growing up, it was normal to get to know people, talking to people before you even start talking about business. There's no way, if, you know, people literally start talking about business this day without even knowing if I've got kids, even my last name, and sometimes they don't even know my full first name properly, and it's suddenly talking business. What sort of business can you do with someone? How do you think you can connect with someone when you don't even know their name, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
I mean, I think it changed a lot when we had the pandemic and we were all forced to be at home. Mm-hmm. And the technology is magnificent. And this is a perfect example. You know, we are literally on opposite sides of the planet, talking to each other in real time without any time delays. You know, 100 years ago, I'd write you a letter and you might get it a month later, and then you'd write me a letter
like 6 months later.
Yeah. So we've got this fantastic ability to communicate in real time with people anywhere, but we're all doing it behind a screen. And I remember when the pandemic ended and we started going back to meeting people in real life, and I was at this one event, and this woman who was running the event, one of her favorite comments was, "Oh, you have legs, because I've only ever seen you from here up." And so I think the technology has made it harder, and on a personal level, it's really interesting. One of the members of the team of one of my clients said to me once, when we'd stopped meeting face to face and we're just doing it online, she said, "You've become very businesslike. You're not asking us how we are. You're not, you know," and I hadn't even thought about it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I realized, because I'm not physically in the room and I haven't come up and, hi and have a hug and how are you and all that. It's just like, here's 6 of us on a Zoom, right? Well, let's get on with it. And again, I think the technology is great that enables us to do that, but the technology is also bringing us down because we've lost that touch. And I think that AI is also going to have a big impact on that, because again, the way we communicate and the way we send information out into the world is changing. And AI is an incredibly powerful tool, and used wisely, it's fantastic. But I think a lot of people use it lazily and just think, oh, well, I'll plug it into AI and everything will be fine.
Wow. So basically, it's just, that example you gave is quite powerful. You being told that, listen, hey, you're all businessy since we've come on Zoom, and you took that response, feedback, and created that level of awareness. Go, hold on. There's a point here. And this is where we all sometimes forget. And to be honest, that happens to me too as well. Like when I'm in front of the Zoom, most times I just get straight onto it. But when I'm with someone in person, I'm a very huggy kind of person. I like huggy kind of stuff. And I'll talk to them about, how's the weekend, how's the kids, how's the family, and things like that. I do that better from a face. You know what's amazing? Now that I'm listening to myself say this, I realize I convert people better when I see them face to face compared to online, 100%. Actually.
100%.
Amazing. Well, guys, listen again. These are great things you can take away into your personal life, into business life. This is not just about business, this is also personal, because we can also apply this in our relationship. It's not just about, go do this. Taking time to know your kids, taking time to know your parents, your siblings, your partner, and, asking them how was your day and things like that. It just makes the relationship stronger, right? Absolutely. So, this is quite remarkable. This leads me to my next question, which is, how do you represent, as a mentor, underrepresented founders in your journey as a mentor?
So for me personally, my main area of focus on underrepresented founders is female founders. And that came about 6 years ago. I was speaking at an event on fundraising, and a woman came up and asked me why so little funding went to female founders. And I looked at her and I said, I have no idea, but I'll find out. And Collins, what I found out shocked me. The level of funding from venture capital into all female businesses in the UK and Europe has never been more than 2%. And in America, it's never been more than 3%.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's shocking. And that led me to write another book called Funded Female Founders.
Funded Female Founders. And you can get this on Amazon as well?
On Amazon, yeah. On Amazon.
Funded Female Founders. That's amazing. That's incredible. I find that really hard to believe. I thought most VCs actually sought after female founders because they are more organized. They're very good in terms of juggling multiple things at the same time. They're better 100%. CEOs, better leaders. So I just had these assumptions that if you have a female founder, I just assume that they've got a better probability to raise capital to get funding because they are female founders. Wow.
There's plenty of evidence that shows that teams with at least one woman in the leadership team or the founding team significantly outperform all male teams.
100%.
And yet the money isn't traveling that way.
Well, it's quite interesting. Like when you did your studies, what would you? Because I'm presuming people are not intentionally doing this. Is there a reason why the percentage is so low?
So based on the research and the work that I've done and the conversations I've had, there's three core factors. Number one is just inherent gender bias. It's a lot better than it was 50 years ago, but it's still not on parity. The second reason is there are not enough women in senior investment decision-making roles in funds that invest. It's still very much a male, and in fact, a white male area of the world. And shortly after I discovered this, I remember one of the pieces of literature that got published that I've kept looked at all of the listed open-ended investment companies in the UK, and there were about 1,500 of them at the time. And they found that 108 of the funds were run by men named David, which I thought was kind of cool.
David. Interesting.
And only 105 funds were run by women.
Wow.
So like 7%.
I'll be thinking if this numbers and this is all news to me. Honestly, I'm actually shocked. I'm presuming this is obviously an opportunity, even from a government standpoint, also from leadership standpoint.
Look at the statistics. There's an organization called PitchBook that tracks all of the venture capital
Could you
deals.
just say that again? Organization called what?
PitchBook.
PitchBook.
PitchBook. PitchBook. That tracks pitchbook.com, and they track all of the gender mix. So all male, all female, and mixed gender teams of founders, and they look at what's the percentage of pitch decks submitted and what's the percentage of funding achieved. And consistently, this data goes back to 2008. Consistently, women have submitted a higher percentage of decks than they've received in funding. Mixed gender teams, it's getting better. And men have received more funding than the proportion of decks that they submit, which leads on to my third area of why this is, and that is that women tend to be much more conservative in their financial projections. And venture capitalists are looking for organizations that are going to shoot the moon.
Wow.
So if you go to a venture capitalist and you're conservative, you're not going to get their interest.
Right, I see. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. At the end of the day, for the investors, who's going to give us the better return on investment? While women sometimes could underplay it, but most likely would outperform their projection.
And bear in mind the way the venture capital industry works, and the more honest ones describe themselves as sophisticated gamblers, because that's what they are. They'll go out and they'll raise a fund of, say, 50 million, and they'll make 100 investments of $500,000 each. And they know going in that 10 of those investments are going to go bust. And 85 of them are going to become what they call zombies that just kind of tick over but don't really make anything, and you're not going to invest any more in them. And they often get sold back to the founders or sold off to a turnaround specialist. And then there's 5 left that are going to make all the money. And, 1 or 2 of them might make a 2x return, and 1 or 2 of them might make a 5x return. And one of them shoots the moon, and it pays back everything.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
So if you're going to go out to a venture capitalist and pitch to them, you've got to demonstrate to them that you have a belief and a confidence that your business is the one that's going to shoot the moon.
So could that mean this is an opportunity to improve female founders' sales skill ability? Because it's got to do with sales and their pitching ability for them to be able to pitch and speak the language that funders, venture capitalists want to hear. That could be an area that is designed, created for specifically female founders to help them better raise capital.
Yes. There's also an interesting one that's come about. It's not something that I thought of initially, but it's come about from the discussion. And I've had discussions with thousands of female founders over the last 6 years, which is that for a lot of them, they don't want to build $1 billion company. They want to build something that's 50 or 100 million is great. And that enables me to carry on having my life. And that enables me to have my kids. And that enables me to, be a pillar in my community and all of that. I don't need to go for this $1 billion company. I don't want to, because you have to be very, very singularly focused if that's what you're going for. And everything else falls by the wayside. And for a lot of them, that's not what they want. And so one of the key things I've been working on and trying to do over the last several years, I haven't got it right yet, but is figure out, is there something that we can create that's an alternative to the venture capital industry? Because I'm not going to change the venture capital industry. They make tons of money, so they're not going to change.
That's true.
But something needs to happen.
Absolutely. I'm going to think on that one too, as well, to see, what sort of opportunities out there to be able to, because listen to these numbers, I'm going to do a little bit more research on that too, as well, just to triple check those numbers. Pick up my book. There's a lot of it. It took me 18 months to write that book. I will most definitely go check the book out. And once I do that, I'll probably even send you a picture of it too, as well. But it's going to be quite interesting to see how this goes, because at the same time, when you discover there is a gap in the market, that automatically screams out opportunity too as well. So clearly, 2%, that's a massive opportunity space right there. You don't really need to reinvent the wheel. It's just go, what are these guys doing? How can we move the weight a little bit more towards this segment of group of individuals too as well?
There was a study published in the UK in 2019. It was led by a woman who used to be the chief executive of one of the big banks here. And this study found that if women started businesses and were funded at the same level as men, it would increase the value of the UK economy by £250 billion, which is about 11% of GDP.
Wow!
Boom!
Wow! Incredible!
Yeah, that would wipe out the entire cumulative deficit in the UK.
100%. Wow! This is amazing. Again, amazing insight here you're giving us. Really do appreciate this insight. Dave, if you were to go back to your 30-year-old self as a mentor, what would you say to your 30-year-old self?
Listen to wise people.
That's a very broad statement. Listen to wise people. Wise people. Elaborate a little bit on that.
Listen to people who have more experience than you. It was kind of like we were talking about earlier. Listen to people who've been there and done it. You don't have to do everything that they say, but I remember at the time, being given advice and thinking, oh, well, yeah, no, fine, whatever. Yeah, you did it your way. That was a long time ago. I'm doing it my way. And just, lose a bit of that cockiness. Learn a little bit more humility.
Amazing. No, that's really amazing.
Become a better human being.
Amazing.
I was a young, thrusting executive, and I was probably annoying as hell.
I can just picture that. But it's also interesting what you said to as well along the way. You said you do a lot of merger and acquisition as well, right? And I remember, starting up a few businesses, and I realized towards this whole journey of being an entrepreneur owning multiple businesses, I realized it is quite difficult starting something from the scratch. And I'm presuming you guys could potentially start things from the scratch, but you've realized that it's easier to just buy something existing and improve what's already existing, rather than trying to start from the beginning. And that's why I always go to my mentees and say, listen, hey, the worst thing I would ever do ever again in my life is to start business from scratch. The only time I would do that is if that business doesn't exist on this planet. But if it does exist, it's not something new. Why would I want to start from scratch? Just go, tap into something that's already existing, and you step in there. All you need to do is find something that is poorly managed, that you can add value to, implement some AIs, implement some proper SOPs, procedures in there, and scale it up a little bit. It's quicker, better, and faster. What's your take on acquiring existing or starting a new business? Like, what's your take on that particular topic?
Acquiring existing, it's part of the face thing, and it enables you to to grow so much faster. The example I gave you, that when I joined that business, we had £1 million in revenue. When I left, we had 27 million. We tripled that company 3 years in a row. 1 to 3, 3 to 9, 9 to 27.
Wow.
Unless you're in an incredibly hot sector, you can't achieve that kind of growth organically.
No, you can't. Most definitely.
Not in 3 years. And the beauty of going in and acquiring a business is it's already got customers, it's already got suppliers, it's already got employees, it's got a brand, it's got a presence in the market. You might have a geographical business, and so let's say your business is based in Sydney and you want to expand geographically. So you want to buy a business in Brisbane, and you want to buy a business in Perth, and you want to buy a business in Melbourne, and that allows you to cover all of Australia. I mean, not the whole thing, but the main kind of centers. But that's a great way to expand. Or you could say, well, I'm going to go out and buy one of my competitors and we'll put the two companies together.
Well, that's quite amazing. I also got to give you, prompts for, really talking about Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and all this stuff. You know Australia quite well for someone that's based in the UK. I don't really know UK very well, so I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed that you're able to name all the cities. I'm like, I should have done my research. Manchester, or where do I know? Newcastle, I don't know. But anyway, as a mentor, I'm presuming you've mentored a large amount of founders and CEOs. While you're doing this, I know, yes, part of it is to help them grow their business. Part of it is to help them increase their turnover. Part of it is to help them make sure they're compliant, all the stuff. But what sort of legacy would you like to leave behind with your founders, and what would you like them to remember you by, as their mentor? When someone's to talk about David, what would you like them to remember you by?
One of the key things that I do with all of my clients is I like to understand, when you're all done, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next? And if someone says, I want to make 100 million and live on a yacht and sit on a beach, I'm not really interested. I'm interested in people who, want to leave something behind, maybe want to establish a foundation. One of my clients has established an educational foundation. I'm a trustee of it. We've built a school in Kenya, and we're doing a bunch of different things. Within my own business, we give 1% of revenue to charitable causes every year. We've picked two of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We've picked Goal 4, which is quality education, and Goal 5, which is gender equality. And we give to causes that support that on a quarterly basis.
Fantastic. That's really, really fantastic. It's really good. So basically what you're also saying is not just really about just growing your network, but also giving back.
Absolutely.
Would you say that's quite important as part of this whole acquisition process as humans, as part of our time on this planet Earth? Would you say it's important for us to add it as part of our goal to give back to our community, give back to the world, to leave the world a better place than what it was than when we were here? Is that something we should all be striving for?
In an ideal world, yes. Maybe it's not for everybody. Let me just give you an example. About 6 months ago, I was walking down the street and I saw this homeless lady on the curb with a sign, homeless, please help, all that. And I said, are you hungry? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what would you like to eat? And I went into a sandwich shop and got her what she wanted to eat. And I came back and I sat down on the curb with her and talked with her for about 10 minutes. And I said, what else do you need? And she said, well, it's £20 to sleep in a hostel. And I reached into my pocket and I gave her £20. And we talked again. And, she said, God bless you and all that wonderful stuff. And I walked away and I was walking from one part of London to another. It was maybe a mile. And two people on the street stopped me and said, hey, man, you've got light shining out of you.
You've got lights shining out of you.
Shining out of you. I didn't know it, but these people were walking along the street, and I guess because of this connection I'd had with this homeless woman, somehow my aura was shining and they saw it.
I would have just gone to go do it multiple times, so I glow brighter. That's amazing. But it's quite incredible. That being said, would you take yourself as a are you a Christian? Do you practice any type of religion? Because some people don't believe in that, what you just said. I personally myself, I'm a Christian. And what's your take on that? When someone said that to you, do you read into it? Is there any kind of context to it for you?
So I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual.
Spiritual. Gotcha. Amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So I meditate every day.
Amazing. Every day, every Monday to Sunday.
Every day.
And how long do your meditation normally go for?
Anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour.
Oh, fantastic. That's something I got to try and get into. I just haven't had the time to be able to do it. It's something I want to try and get into it. David,
it's very grounding. It really helps you just be calm. And it really, if you've got a thorny problem, it's a great one to just, without worrying about what's going on in the world, just let it filter through your brain.
Amazing.
Give it a try. What I would recommend is maybe find a place where they do a guided meditation to start.
Gotcha. And do you normally do it early hours in the morning? Do you do it late in the afternoon?
First thing in the morning, as soon as I get out of bed.
Amazing. David B. Horne, I've got your exponential growth quick 5 questions for you. These questions is just either one word or one sentence answer for you. We're going to go quick on this one word. So the first one is wealth definition. In one word, what does wealth mean to you, David?
In one word. Wow. I don't think I can do it in one word. I could do it in one sentence.
Okay, go in one sentence. You've got those 2 options, one word or one sentence.
Wealth to me means the ability to create the life that you want. Even if my example with the wine business, and I lost a lot of money in the wine business, but I was able to draw on the wealth of what I did to go out and recreate my new business and build financial independence from there.
Wow.
So wealth to me is the ability, no matter what you're in, to be able to create financial independence. You might or might not have it right now, but you have the ability to do it.
I love it. Question 2, growth strategy. Your go-to lever for scaling a business fast. One word or one sentence.
Acquisition.
I love it. Acquisition. Oh, that's powerful. I love it. I love that answer. Acquisition. You don't need to elaborate on that. That's spot on. I agree with that. That's amazing. Third question. Biggest M&A risk. What's the number one red flag in any acquisition? Number one red flag.
If you're doing the due diligence process and you find things that the seller hasn't told you, because you need to develop a relationship. And in the first meeting you'll say, here's my business, it's great and all that, and as you expand on the conversations and get deeper and deeper, every business has something in there that's just a little bit, not necessarily illegal, but just something that's a little bit funny. It might be a very mundane thing. It's very common to put your partner on the salary even though they don't work in the company. So tell them that as you're progressing the negotiations, rather than them coming in and doing due diligence and finding out all of a sudden, oh, so your partner doesn't work in the business but takes out $250,000 a year.
Oh, so the car your partner also drives, that Lamborghini, is also
exactly
by the business as well.
Exactly. You've got to have that honesty of communication, and like I said, you don't need to spill all of the beans on day one.
Yeah.
But because an acquisition process takes a few months to really go through.
Yep.
So as the relationship develops, you need to just become a little bit more open.
Love it. I agree with that. That's so true. Point number 4, founders' blind spots. One word to describe what most entrepreneurs overlook. The blind spots.
The blind spots. I got 2 choices. One is finance, because so many of them overlook finance. And the other one is letting go.
Letting go. Finance, letting go. Yeah, I can relate to the letting go. I can relate to the letting go. And finance, I've seen that too often. These are quite powerful. And the very last one, funding philosophy. What's your golden rule when raising capital?
Ask for more money than you think you need.
Ask for more money than you think you need. I love that. Ask for more money than you think you need. There's even also a saying I used to say that you don't go ask for money when you need it. You always go ask for money when you don't need it.
Exactly.
Applies when it comes to lending to small. And I get some clients, they say to me, but I don't need that much. I'm like, perfect. That's when you should have it ready to go, because when you start going to go ask for when you need it, then you really start facing a lot of pushback, a lot of challenges. And this works when it comes to raising capital. It also works when it comes to acquiring funding from the bank to buy a property or acquire a business or things like that. Always ask for money. If the bank says to you they can give you, as long as you're quite good in managing your finance, because it's quite, risky giving money to someone that don't know how to manage finance, right? So I got to put that disclaimer there. You got to be good at managing finance.
Yeah.
But yes, always ask for more money. I love it, David. I've enjoyed our time together.
Me too.
I would love to get one piece of advice. What's the last piece of advice you can give to our viewers that they can take with them today?
Believe in yourself and go out there and do it. You may face obstacles, and obstacles are designed to make us stronger. Believe in yourself, have a vision of where you want to get to, and stay focused on that, and you can weather any storms that you face along the way.
Wow, this is powerful. David, I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we're speaking. I've just got this tingling feeling inside of me that I know we're going to be speaking soon. I know I'm going to be reading your book, that's for sure. When next are we going to be speaking? I don't know. Maybe I might be seeing the UK. I don't know. But I can't wait to, have another conversation. Hopefully the next conversation is going to be in person, so I get to give you a hug too as well. And we get to talk about families. So I told you I'm a hugger. That's what I do.
Yep. Me too.
It's been quite amazing. Thank you so much, David. David B Horne. Guys, you've heard from David B Horne at the CEO Mentorship Series. Thank you, David, for your time. We really do appreciate your time, and we can't wait to see you again soon. Thank you. And bye for now.